My name is Karen, and this is my story, one I never thought I'd have to tell. It began on a bright morning in Miami, the kind of morning that feels soaked in salt and sunlight. The cruise ship looked massive from the port, a floating city gleaming white against the blue horizon. William, my brother, stood beside me in his crisp polo shirt, sunglasses pushed up on his head, flashing that same confident smile he'd worn since college. We were supposed to be celebrating life, or pretending to. After our parents' funeral, he'd said a family trip would help us reconnect. I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe he still had love for me somewhere under all that ambition. Our parents had left behind more than memories. They left us their old white house in Savannah, a wide, beautiful home with wraparound porches, magnolia trees, and years of laughter still echoing through its walls. Along with it came their estate, savings, investments, and assets worth about $3.2 million. We were meant to share it evenly, just as they'd wanted. I thought William and I would work it out like family does. But that belief would cost me more than I could ever imagine. The first few days aboard the cruise were calm. The ocean stretched endlessly, soft waves brushing the sides of the ship like whispers. People laughed over cocktails and danced under string lights. I wandered the decks at night, letting the cool air brush against my skin, feeling small but peaceful in the middle of all that water. William seemed restless, though. He spent a lot of time in the casino, losing small stacks of chips, drinking too much, making calls when he thought I wasn't listening. I should have paid more attention. I should have heard the warning in the way he said my name, clipped, almost resentful, when we talked about home. On the fourth night, the air changed. The wind felt heavier, sharper, like it carried something waiting to happen. After dinner, I went out to the deck alone. The sky was dark velvet scattered with stars, and the ship's lights drew long golden paths across the water. It was one of those quiet, suspended moments that make you feel both safe and fragile. Then William appeared behind me. He leaned against the railing beside me, holding a drink, smiling too easily. "You ever think about what you'll do with your share of the estate?" he asked casually. His tone was light, but I knew him well enough to hear the strain under it. "I'm not sure yet," I said. "Maybe keep the house. Fix it up. Mom loved that porch." He laughed softly. "You and that house. It's just wood and old paint, Karen. You could sell it, buy a new place in Atlanta, or somewhere else. Start fresh." I smiled faintly, staring out at the dark waves. "Not everything needs to be new to have value." He set his glass down. "I could use more than half, you know. I've got plans. Real ones. New business partners. The money could actually do something for me." I turned to him. "William, we both get what Mom and Dad wanted us to have. That's what's fair." His smile faltered, then twisted into something I hadn't seen before. "Or I get it all." I thought he was joking at first until I saw his eyes. Cold. Empty. A kind of calculation that didn't belong to the brother I knew. I took a step back. "William, what are you?" That was when it happened. His hands were on my shoulders before the words were even out of my mouth. The world tilted violently. The railing dug into my back, and then there was nothing beneath me but the dizzying drop into black water. The sound of the ocean swallowed my scream. The shock of the fall knocked the air out of my lungs. When I hit the surface, it was like slamming into glass that shattered around me. Salt burned my throat as I gasped for breath, flailing against the weight of my soaked clothes. Above, the ship kept moving, a wall of light and sound drifting farther away. Panic clawed through me, but instinct took over. "Swim. Stay up. Breathe." I kicked toward a faint orange glimmer bobbing nearby, a life ring someone had thrown from the deck. My fingers slipped twice before catching it. I clung to that ring like it was the last thing keeping me tethered to the world. The water was freezing, and my body shook so hard I could barely think. Somewhere, faintly, I heard a voice shouting orders and the hum of an engine growing louder. When the rescue boat reached me, strong hands grabbed under my arms. A woman's voice, steady and sure, said, "I've got you. You're safe, sweetheart." Her name was Maria. I'll never forget that. She wrapped me in a silver thermal blanket, her eyes full of concern and disbelief. "You fell?" she asked softly. "Or were you pushed?" I couldn't speak. My teeth were chattering too hard, and my throat burned with seawater. But she looked into my eyes, and maybe she saw the answer there. She squeezed my shoulder and said, "We'll take care of you." When I was back aboard, the ship's medic checked my vitals. Everything blurred. The hum of the lights, the smell of antiseptic, Maria's calm voice in the background. I kept replaying the moment William's hands met my shoulders, the feel of his push, the shock of betrayal deeper than the cold of the sea. My own brother had decided my life was worth less than money. I remember whispering, half to myself, he really did it. He really meant to kill me. That night, lying under a ruffled blanket, I stared at the ceiling and thought of our parents, of how proud they were of us, how they used to say, "You two only have each other when we're gone." I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. William had destroyed that truth with one act. I don't know how long I stayed awake, listening to the low rumble of the ship. Every sound felt sharp, every memory burned. I kept thinking about the house, the creaking porch steps, the smell of rain on the magnolias, the life that was supposed to go on peacefully. He wanted all of it. He wanted my share of the money, the house, the future. But what he didn't know, what I didn't know yet either, was that someone had been filming that night. That out of all the strangers watching the sunset, one teenager's camera had caught everything. I didn't learn about that until the next day, but even then, in that cold bed, I felt something shift inside me. A quiet promise forming in my chest. I will live. I will tell the truth. William may have pushed me into the ocean, but he would never bury me there. Maria came by one last time before dawn to check on me. She smiled, kind and tired, and said, "Rest, honey. The sun's coming soon." And when I finally closed my eyes, I held on to that, the idea of morning, of light breaking through after the dark. I didn't know what would come next. All I knew was that I had survived, and that somewhere deep inside me, a part of me had already decided this was not the end of my story. I woke up the next morning still trembling. My body ached as if the ocean had left a bruise on every inch of me. The hum of the ship was steady, almost soothing, and for a second I forgot where I was. Then the memories came flooding back. William's voice, the push, the fall, the cold. I pressed a hand to my chest, feeling my heartbeat, fast and frightened. Jacob, the ship's medic, came in just as I sat up. He was young, maybe late 20s, with kind eyes and a calm voice that steadied the panic rising in me. "How are you feeling, Karen?" he asked. "Alive," I said, though the word felt foreign. He smiled softly and checked my pulse. That's a good start. I wanted to tell him everything, that my brother had pushed me, that I'd seen his face just before I fell, but the words stuck like salt in my throat. When they finally came out, they came in pieces. "It wasn't an accident," I whispered. "My brother did it. He pushed me." Jacob froze, his hand hovering midair. "Are you sure?" "Yes." I looked straight at him. "I'm sure." He nodded slowly, then said he'd call ship security. His calmness helped me breathe, but the thought of facing William again made my stomach twist. Within an hour, 2 security officers arrived, a man named Thomas and a woman named Rebecca. They spoke gently, asking questions, writing everything down. I told them about the argument, the way he talked about the estate, the moment he said, "Or, I get it all." Thomas listened carefully, his brow furrowing. "We'll locate your brother," he said. "For now, stay here and rest. You're safe." Safe. The word didn't feel real. My brother was somewhere on this same ship, probably laughing, maybe even pretending to worry about me. I stared at the ceiling, trying not to think about his hands on my shoulders. I thought about our parents, about how they believed the two of us would take care of each other after they were gone. I remembered Dad teaching us to fish on the Savannah River, Mom humming while baking peach cobbler. I wondered if they'd see us now, if they'd understand how greed could twist blood into something unrecognizable. Sometime that afternoon, Thomas returned with surprising news. "Karen," he said, "we might have something." He explained that a teenage passenger, maybe 16 or 17, had been filming the sunset the night before. Her name was Lily Morrison from Denver. Her camera had captured the ocean view, and just off to the side, me and William by the railing. My heart thudded. You mean she recorded it? He nodded. We haven't watched the full video yet, but there's something there. A few hours later, they played the footage in the small infirmary office. My hands shook as Thomas set the tablet on the counter and hit play. The screen showed the deck bathed in gold light, the ocean stretching forever. The camera swayed a little, capturing the crowd and the horizon. Then, in the lower corner, two figures, me and William. Even from that small frame, I could see it clearly. He stepped behind me, said something, and with a sudden, decisive motion, pushed. There was no mistaking it. No stumble, no accident. Just deliberate force. The sound of the wind swallowed my scream, but the body language said it all. I covered my mouth, tears spilling down my face. That's it, I whispered. That's what he did. Thomas exhaled. Karen, this is enough for the authorities. Once we dock, Miami police will be waiting. I didn't know whether to feel relief or heartbreak. Seeing it on screen, seeing the moment I nearly died, made it feel both too real and impossibly distant. Later that night, word spread fast among the crew. By dawn, the clip had already leaked online. I still don't know how it happened. Maybe someone from security shared it, or Lily herself posted it, horrified by what she'd captured. Either way, it didn't matter. Once it hit the internet, it took on a life of its own. When Jacob brought me breakfast, he showed me his phone. It's everywhere, Karen, he said quietly. Everyone's talking about it. I took the phone from him, my fingers trembling. The video was there, cut down to a few seconds, looping endlessly. The title read, "Man pushes woman off cruise ship, caught on camera." There were thousands of comments. People arguing, angry, shocked. Some saying they couldn't believe anyone would do that. Others calling for justice. I watched myself fall again and again. The deck lights, the sky, the shape of my brother's hand. My own screams swallowed by the wind. I couldn't look away. It felt like watching someone else, some other woman living a nightmare I barely survived. By the time the ship reached port, there were reporters waiting. I could see the flashing cameras from the infirmary window. Thomas arranged for me to leave quietly through a staff exit. Maria, the woman who had pulled me from the sea, met me there with a soft smile. She handed me a gray hoodie, her own, and said, "Keep it. It'll make you feel safe." As I walked down the ramp, the air felt heavy, full of noise and voices. I saw William a few steps ahead, his head turning nervously from side to side. He didn't see the police waiting by the gate. He didn't see the cameras already pointed at him. He looked like a man still trying to control the story, not realizing the story had already escaped him. When an officer approached him and said his name, he blinked in confusion. Then he saw me. Our eyes met for one brief, unbearable second. He looked shocked, maybe even afraid. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small in front of him. "William Parker," the officer said, "you're under arrest for attempted murder." The crowd went wild, reporters shouting questions, flashes going off like lightning. William stammered something I couldn't hear, his voice drowned by the noise. I just stood there, silent, the world spinning around me. Hours later, at the police station, I gave my statement. Over and over, I repeated what had happened. Each retelling hurt less, like peeling away the sting one layer at a time. I learned that the footage had already been verified by digital forensics. It had even been shown on the morning news. My phone, which I'd kept sealed in a waterproof pouch, was full of missed calls from friends, from old classmates, even from strangers offering their support. That night, when I finally got to a hotel room near the port, I sat on the bed and stared at the city lights outside. The world had seen my fall. They'd seen my brother's crime. And somehow, that truth, terrible as it was, felt like protection. I took Maria's hoodie from my bag and held it close. It smelled faintly of sea air and detergent. I thought about how close I'd come to disappearing forever, and how chance, fate, or maybe kindness had pulled me back. As I lay down to sleep, the hum of the city outside reminded me of the ship, steady and endless. But this time, I wasn't floating helplessly anymore. This time, I was grounded.
Alive. Seen.
And for the first time since that night on the deck, I believed I might actually find peace, not because the world watched, but because I had survived long enough to tell my story myself. The morning William's face appeared on every screen in America. I was in a hotel room with the curtains half open, staring at the thin line of sunlight sneaking across the carpet. The television was on mute, but I could read the captions just fine. Cruise ship attempted murder. Suspect arrested after viral video. His mugshot sat beside a still frame of me falling backward into the sea. I looked at it for a long time, not sure which image hurt more, his cold, vacant stare or my terrified fall. By sunrise, a roaring crowd had gathered outside his townhouse in New York. Neighbors, reporters, people who had seen the footage at 2 a.m. and driven across the city just to be there. They stood on the sidewalks, some holding signs that said "Justice for Karen" in big black letters. He appeared briefly at a second-floor window, pale and hollow-eyed, and the crowd erupted with shouting. "You tried to kill your sister," one man yelled. "How could you?" someone else screamed. I watched it live on the news feed. The look on William's face was pure disbelief, like he couldn't understand that the world no longer believed him. Later that day, Miami police officially charged him with attempted murder. His bail was set at $500,000, and even that didn't buy him sympathy. His lawyer, a man named Peter Dalton who wore dark suits and spoke with rehearsed precision, gave a press statement outside the courthouse. "This was an unfortunate accident, a misunderstanding," he told reporters. "My client deeply regrets what occurred. I remember sitting in my hotel room, whispering at the screen, 'A misunderstanding doesn't end with someone in the ocean, Peter.'" My own lawyer, Evelyn Grant, was different. She was calm but fierce, with silver hair and a way of making every word count. When I met her in her Savannah office 2 days later, she handed me a folder thicker than a phone book. "We'll go through everything carefully," she said. "He's not walking away from this." Inside were the details of my life reduced to paper and numbers, the $3.2 million estate, the White House on Magnolia Street valued at $420,000, the hospital bills that came to $6,200, and the $15,000 retainer she'd need to move forward with the case. Each page told a story of what William stood to gain if I died. Money had been his motive all along, plain and cruel. The weeks that followed felt like living underwater again, muffled, slow, surreal. I went back home to Savannah, to the house where we grew up. The place had always smelled faintly of lemon polish and sunlight. I stood in the doorway, clutching my keys, feeling both safe and unbearably alone. The walls still held our childhood laughter, the sound of Mom singing to the radio, Dad calling us in for dinner. Every step through that house reminded me what William had tried to erase. Neighbors came by when they heard I was back. Mrs. Caldwell from next door brought a casserole and hugged me so tightly, I thought she might never let go. "You poor thing," she whispered. "We all saw it. You're brave, Karen. So brave." A retired veteran down the street left an envelope under my front door one morning. Inside was $200 in cash and a note written in shaky handwriting. "We believe you." I sat on the porch steps and cried over that note for 10 minutes straight. It wasn't the money. It was the kindness, the quiet reminder that I wasn't invisible. I tried to settle into a routine again. Mornings, I drank coffee on the porch where Dad used to read the paper. I painted in the afternoons, even though my hands still trembled sometimes. Nights were harder. Every creak of the floorboards reminded me of the cruise deck, of William's footsteps behind me. When sleep wouldn't come, I'd turn on the small lamp beside my bed and read the same book of poems over and over. I kept that anonymous note tucked between the pages like a prayer. One evening, Evelyn called. Her voice was crisp but warmer than usual. "The prosecutors have the full-length footage now," she said. "They've also confirmed 3 witness statements. 2 passengers and a deckhand saw what happened. It's airtight, Karen. They're going for a strong sentence." For the first time in weeks, I exhaled fully. Thank you, I said softly. After the call, I walked through the house, room by room. I touched the edges of picture frames, Mom in her garden hat, Dad on the fishing pier, William and me as kids with scraped knees and matching smiles. I couldn't reconcile those memories with the man who'd tried to kill me. Greed had hollowed him out, turning my brother into a stranger. I stopped in the living room and looked around. The sunlight coming through the window hit the old wooden floor in the same golden streaks it always had. It was almost 4 p.m., the same hour Mom used to say was the best light of the day. I sat on the couch and let the quiet fill me. This house wasn't just walls and wood, it was everything good my parents built. William had put a price on it. He'd put a price on me. But he couldn't touch this moment, this peace. A week later, reporters started showing up at the gate again. They wanted interviews, comments, reactions. Some of them were kind, others just curious. I said very little. The courts will handle it, I told one young journalist. My part of the story is survival. At night, I sometimes caught news segments replaying the same clip, slowed down, analyzed, debated. People treated it like a symbol of justice, betrayal, resilience. But for me, it was just one night, one shove that divided my life into before and after. One Sunday morning, I walked to the mailbox and found a single envelope with no return address. Inside was a photograph of William and me when we were children, maybe 7 and 9, sitting in front of the Savannah house. Someone had written on the back, "Don't let him take your piece too." I didn't know who sent it, but I placed it on my nightstand, beside the note that said, "We believe you." Together, they reminded me that even when darkness tries to drown you, there are still hands, seen and unseen, ready to pull you back to shore. That night, I locked every door, turned off the lights, and stood by the front window looking out at the quiet street. The same stars I'd seen from that ship were scattered above Savannah, but here, they didn't feel distant. They felt like home. I whispered to the empty air, "You can't hurt me anymore, William." And for the first time since the fall, I believed it. The courthouse in New York smelled faintly of coffee and dust, like every tired truth that had ever been told inside it. I sat behind the rail, hands clasped in my lap, my heartbeat steady but heavy. Maria was beside me, calm and loyal, having flown up from Florida just to testify. Jacob and Officer Thomas were there too, sitting a few rows back. The sight of them gave me courage. They were the people who had seen me not as a headline or a victim, but as a human being who had simply refused to disappear. When the video played in court, the room went silent. You could hear a pen click somewhere in the back, and a soft cough from the judge's clerk. On the screen, the ocean gleamed silver under the fading sun, and then there we were, William and me, at the railing. The push was clear, deliberate. A murmur rippled through the gallery. William didn't look at me. He stared straight ahead, jaw tight, as if ignoring me could change the truth. The prosecutor spoke with quiet strength, outlining the facts. The will, the estate, the motive, the moment. Evelyn, my lawyer, sat poised, her silver hair glinting under the fluorescent lights. She didn't need to embellish anything. The evidence spoke for itself. When the judge finally spoke, his words were slow and measured, like stones being laid in a wall. He spoke of intent, betrayal, and trust broken beyond repair. He said the ocean had almost taken me, but it was greed that truly tried to drown me. When the sentence came, the numbers sounded distant, 15 years in state prison. The words echoed in the room, heavy but final. I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I just felt something loosen inside me, like a breath I'd been holding since the moment I hit the water. William stood as the guards took him away, still not looking at me. His face was pale, and for a fleeting second, I saw not the man who tried to kill me, but the boy who used to chase lightning bugs with me in our backyard in Savannah. Then that image faded, replaced by the truth I could never unsee. When it was over, I walked out into the New York afternoon. The sky was gray but kind, the kind that makes the air feel soft and forgiving. Reporters shouted my name, microphones pushed forward, questions tumbling out. "How do you feel, Karen? Do you forgive your brother?" I kept walking. Forgiveness wasn't theirs to ask for or mine to give on command. I bought a bus ticket with $42 in cash and boarded a southbound line that would take me back to Savannah. As the city faded into fields and the fields gave way to forests, I rested my head against the window and watched the world move by, steady and wide. When I stepped off the bus that night, the air smelled like wet earth and honeysuckle. Home. I walked the quiet street to the white house on Magnolia Street, the one my parents built with more love than money. I stood on the porch, looking up at the familiar windows glowing faintly in the moonlight. Inside, everything was waiting, the same floors, the same walls, the same safe silence. I unlocked the door and stepped in. The first thing I did was make tea in Mom's old blue kettle. The whistle sounded softer than I remembered, but comforting. I sat at the kitchen table with my notebook and wrote the words that had been sitting inside me for months. I survived. I am not the fall. I am the swimmer, the voice that called out, the woman who came back. The next few weeks were quiet in a way that felt like healing. I cleaned out the spare room and turned it into a small art studio. Painting had always been my peace, even when life wasn't. The first canvas I finished was of the ocean. Not the night it tried to take me, but the way it looked in the morning light, calm and endless. I sold that painting for $300 to a cafe downtown. I used $50 to buy new brushes and saved the rest. The estate money stayed in the bank, untouched except for necessities, groceries, the electric bill, and a little each month for something I called joy. Sometimes I'd send $20 to shelters that helped women like me, women rebuilding their lives after someone tried to take it away. It felt small, but it felt right. People in town started to recognize me. At the market or along the river walk, someone would stop and ask, "Are you the woman from that cruise video?" I always smiled and said, "Yes, but that's not all I am." Then I'd tell them about my paintings, or the stray cat I was feeding, or the poetry night I'd started attending at a local cafe. They'd smile back, say my name, and for a moment, I wasn't a story on a screen. I was just Karen. On quiet evenings, I'd sit on the porch with a cup of tea, listening to the crickets and the rustle of oak leaves. The house felt full again, not of people, but of peace. Sometimes I imagine my parents sitting beside me, proud, whispering that I'd finally come home to myself. One night, I wrote a letter I'll never send. "William, I hope you learn what money cannot buy. It cannot buy the peace of a porch at sundown. It cannot buy the trust of a sister. It cannot buy a heart that sleeps well at night. I am leaving you in the past. I choose my house, my friends, my quiet mornings, my work, my life. I choose to live in America with a clear mind and an open door. I choose to leave you alone forever." I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer with a $200 note from the stranger who once told me, "We believe you." I tucked beside it a photograph of Mom and Dad laughing on these same steps and the faded bus ticket that brought me home. Some nights, when the wind moves through the trees, the oak branches tap gently against the window, like soft knuckles knocking just to say, "You made it." I turn off the light, the house warm around me, and I whisper back, "Yes, I did." And for the first time, my name, just mine, feels like enough.